hold this. Perfect. Right. Now,
I want to ask Paul, years ago, Paul, at the hub, they had a meeting of different people from the community discussing where would we be in 30 or 40 years. Barbara Wilden, Glenda Mather, Sue
Barbara
and John.
Barbara,
No, Barbara may not have been.
No, Barbara
Sue and John Watson were there.
Susie, yeah.
Were you there?
No.
With the planning?
No,
because
I didn't get involved with some of that stuff. I knew John and Susie were at that. But, yeah.
I don't know what ever happened to it all, because they had groups for parks, development, sewerage.
One of the only people who could probably tell you would be Glenda Mather. But like so many other good ideas, it seems to go into this black hole which disappears.
I did find a document from 2002 that was the final document, and I did post it on the website, and that was the open spaces and recreation document that may have been from that era, and I'll send it to you so you can have a look, because that incorporated a huge amount of stuff.
Well,
and
if
so
Susie
that was
and John Watson are on it, they would that would probably be from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because I went to it.
Yeah, in actual fact, it wasn't at the current hub, and that's been built since. But there was also another plan in relation to, and it's probably close to Michael's heart, or all three of your hearts, about disability services and the ability to get around town. And a friend of mine who you'd know, Chichi, or probably everyone, Jan Boyd, we were on the bug together, and Jan has been fighting for ages to try and get them even to put disability access around town, so that access that leads down past the new railway station development, she fought for that so that people could actually get the use of the rail trail if they're in a wheelchair.
We had a really good comment about that yesterday, because one of the young ladies who ended up being on the news clip that we did, she goes, all pathways need to be this wide. This is perfect.
They're supposed to be 2 metres wide, but a lot of the older paths aren't, and they do not suit a wheelchair. And that's been Jan. Jan had a really big fight to get that path that goes up and comes around Normanby Street.
That's right.
Which doesn't help people because it doesn't finish. It stops before what used to be the big yellow shed. It stops about 100 metres before that. Anyone in a wheelchair or with any sort of disability equipment would be on grass.
Yes.
I know, because I try to ride a bike on grass. My bike will work on grass, but
well, Jan was very much for the fellow who had a bicycle and could take disability people in it.
Yeah, I can't remember that there was a lady who had one as well, and I can't remember their name, but they were very good, and they used to do that during Disability Week and Seniors Week. We used to have, and there was a lady at the council, and we used to get up there, and they would actually arrange for people to come and be able to get the benefit of it.
Take them down past the caravan park and to the lights, and then bring them back.
And the sadness of it is, to me, and I got gigged badly for signing the document that closed the rail trail. Jan and I signed it actually with Paul Lucas and Bill Ludwig in 2005, but the ideal for that, Paul Lucas funded in part a lot of the stuff for the rail trail and that, so that there could be access. And for some reason, the money wasn't spent on that. The rail trail wasn't completed until 2011 under the Amalgamated Council.
Yeah. And they've put in a new one now that goes past the Oaks and all along the front there, past the Masonic Hall. So pretty well got
The
from
concrete path.
Yes.
Oh, Gigi, your concrete path. If you start out in Yeppoon and go out, I've got one leads right around the corner at my place. It's 2 metres wide, and the number of people who use that is incredible. I ride the rail trail probably 2 to 3 days a week, or probably 2 days a week because I sort of vary where I travel. I ride, but the number of people, particularly young, mainly mothers, because I suppose the
With
fathers at
prams
work,
and
but
everything.
yeah, with prams and that on that rail trail, you have to see to believe.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the sort of thing that we have to look at in terms of what I see as social economy. You know, why can't we do that? And I believe that I know I'm speaking to the converted a little bit, but to put $1 million into social economy where it benefits people who are marginalised or people who feel that they're not getting a benefit out of the community, I think you're getting probably 25% interest on everything they do. Yeah.
I haven't heard from Jan for ages. She's gone
She
very quiet.
No, she had a fall. Oh, actually, a car collided with the rear of her bike up on the roundabout above Hill Street, and she was in hospital. Sorry, she was in hospital, and she had a brain bleed, and everything came good. I haven't seen her for a little while myself, but she lost her confidence because of the fall.
Yeah.
And she's not a young lady either.
Oh God, no, she'd be
80.
pushing 80 odd.
Oh, she'd be over 80. She's old, a bit older. She's older than me. She'd be getting towards 81, 82. I'm sorry, Jan, if I've given away your age, but
No. Well, I remember when she was a music teacher at Ursula's.
Well, she still does some music teaching, and her daughter-in-law teaches musical singing at, I think it's St. Benedict's, and she helps her.
Okay.
I think that's Mark's wife.
Yeah, because then Shirley Green was the one who used to play for the...
Well, Shirley was in the Choral Society,
wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't seen Shirley for ages.
I don't know if she's even still alive, to be honest. Because you don't get the paper anymore.
No, you don't.
And it's hard to find out who's passed away and who hasn't.
Oh well, I try to get around that. I'm not into IT. I'm not really technically minded, but
a lot of stuff's behind a paywall anyway. You can't read a lot of the things unless you pay for it.
There is actually a Facebook page, and it's Rockhampton Deaths and Funerals, and I follow that. And anyone who is actually, which you'd see a death notice in the paper, I get, and I got to a stage I was going to 2 funerals a week.
Same here.
And then I look at, and I look out at people I went to school with, and I think, gee, you're getting old. Then I look in the mirror.
And you say, I'm white-haired myself. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to make
just have to go with the flow.
Look, if my paternal grandmother used to say, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Or lemon butter. Yum.
Oh, Mum used to make lemon butter.
Yeah.
Delicious.
You can't have lemon butter in Queensland. That's a little bit of a sore point at our house because I have never ever eaten peanut butter. Oh. Because in Queensland we never had peanut butter.
Really?
Because butter is made from milk, not peanuts, and it was peanut paste.
Oh, peanut paste.
No. Look, people, and this might sound political, but I've been.
What you grow up with?
Hey,
it's what you've grown up with.
Yeah, I grew up with some real mystifying backgrounds actually, but Joh Bjelke-Petersen as the premier, the old country party was true socialists because you could not sell peanuts, sugar, butter, all of them had to be sold through a board, and it was a guaranteed price. Wool. and then they had so much wool and they couldn't sell it at a profit. So I think they had something like 4 million bales stored in Melbourne. But Joe Peterson would not let anybody advertise, and it was actually legislation which prevented anyone from calling anything butter unless it was made from milk.
Which actually makes sense.
And I've never
it?
seen almond butter, and I've never seen soy butter.
That's
but
true.
They sell you soy milk and soy and
almond milk and
almond
rice milk
I've
and
never seen a breast on a
cashew
soybean
milk.
yet.
And
You haven't lived, Paul.
can I
Oh,
can I tell you something?
yeah, help yourself.
With milk, right? We humans are so stupid drinking milk. Now, I had to go up and have a thing done on my eye with Dr. Winks years ago. And
Dr. Winks on your
Winks.
eye? Oh, I thought
Winks,
Winks
not
on your
Winks.
eye. I thought,
Yeah, but no, that's okay.
Dr.
Anyhow,
Winks. Oh, my God. Sorry.
he had to do an emergency at the hospital. He said, have a look at this magazine, Chi-Chi, and it's an English medical. And I thought, okay, here we go. And their first page was the human body showing, now I'm lost for the word, when your bones are all osteoporosis, right?
Mm.
And there were the scientists from United Kingdom, America, Germany, Switzerland, all their research. The people who are the biggest milk drinkers suffer the worst osteo. And the reasoning being that it is for the bones of cows,
True.
not the bones of human beings.
Yeah, but I mean, you really have to qualify your original statement a little bit, don't you? Because milk isn't a problem because a baby drinks human milk.
That's
but
right.
Then they are into
That's exactly
cow's
right.
milk.
No. The breast milk is fine.
That's right.
And then they said that because of what is in milk, it is drained out of your bones to digest it.
That's right.
And they said, we are the only race amongst people and animals that after we've been breastfed and grown up, still drink milk. Because you don't see a cat drinking milk unless you give it to it.
Unless you give it to it. Yeah.
Unless you give it to it, right?
Yeah.
And a dog. Every animal that is weaned comes off the breast and then goes for vegetables or whatever their thing is. And he said...
Well, there is a tribe in Africa that can't drink cow's milk because their body can't assimilate what's in it. And I think, is that A2? I think that's...
There is a protein, the A2
it's a
protein. They try and make out that it's really good for you. If the cow's got an A2 protein, it's a better quality cow.
Stops your body from absorbing what Cheech was just talking about. But if they take it out, that's what happens. Oh,
well, I have a girlfriend, and I won't mention any names, that drinks 2 litres of milk a day. She just loves milk, whereas I'd have maybe not 2 litres of wine, but I'd have a glass or 2 of wine. Right?
You just forget that you drank
2
litres.
I said to my doctor years ago, he said, you should only have 2 glasses of red. And I said, yeah, Phil, well, that's fine. I went out and bought a new glass. He said, why? Well, why'd you buy a new glass? I said, 375 ml glass. 2 glasses of
bottle.
Yeah.
That's
But
right.
at any rate, she had to go to Hillcrest under Kim Bullwinkle, Dr. Bullwinkle. So I drove her up and he did x-rays on her knee, was to have the replacement. And he said, well, look, I can't schedule you for another 3 or 4 months, which is, these days, it's 2 years. Anyhow,
depends on whether you're in private
medical,
health.
yeah, that's true. Anyhow, she decided to up her milk take. And I said to her, hey, listen, quit it all together. And she said, when you've got Dr. Shingle outside of your house, then maybe I'll listen to you. And I said, well, it was in a doctor's surgery that I read all this blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, I take her up 6 months later to go and see Kim Bullwinkle, and he said, look, before I operate, I just want to run through another x-ray to check. And he came back and he said, oh my God. He said, I've got to do a knee and a hip replacement. I have never seen such deterioration in a person's body as I have in yours. And as he walked out the door, I said, why don't you tell him you've upped your milk intake? And she said, you keep out of it, Chi-Chi.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
My cousin's husband is a painter by trade, but he used to drink 2 litres of milk a day, and they talk about beer gut, beer belly. He had a bigger beer belly than what you ever saw on a person who drank beer. Now, I have milk on cereal, very limited amount, and I have milk in my coffee. I take milk in nothing else, and it all comes back to going to school when they used to get a 1/3 bottle of milk, and we were made to drink it. It would be delivered at 9:30 to the school shed in Longreach in midsummer. And at 11 o'clock we would go out and we'd get given the milk. And because it was from the government, the nuns wouldn't let us have those flavoured straws or flavouring. You drank it. And to this day, I do not drink milk other than, as I just said, I would have no more than probably half a cup of milk a day, if that. And today I've had 2 cups of coffee, so that's that much in the bottom of the cup.
Look, we single-handedly brought down the milk industry right now.
Yep. No, I haven't brought it down. I just don't support
the next one.
I think moving right along, well, controversial. Apparently down at Paul, this one's for you. Down at pre-polling this week, there was police intervention.
Don't start there.
We just go right in.
I rang the police. It was me.
What happened?
Oh, I found out later that he's a serial offender. The police know him. But he came in, he gave everyone a mouthful, and nobody really heard what he said. I didn't hear what he said because I was talking to a friend of mine who was just getting on his bike. He went inside and he was in for about 5 minutes. He came out and, then he started on the old bloke who I was talking to then, because I was there for Brittany, and he started about Brittany. And he was so offensive that the lady, and I know who the lady is, really lovely lady who was handing out for the LNP, and even Lisa, she's a teacher at the school for the Greens, they actually felt threatened. And anyway, one of the people went inside, and as he came out, this bloke stood in front of him, and he said, "Just move aside." And he put his hands on his shoulders, "Just move aside, please," and walked on. Then he got out and he started talking about assault. And I thought to myself, you don't need this, Paul. So I rang the police. The police came and talked him down. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that you don't need. And the policeman said to me afterwards, he said, we talked him down. We told him if he's got something to say it in the ballot box. If you don't like somebody, if you don't think somebody should be there, say it in the ballot box. And but I mean, that's where the whole system is going. I've watched this week on Tuesday, the One Nation candidate was removed from the polling booth in North Rocky because of standing over people and intercepting people before they even got in. And you're not supposed to be. You've got to stay off the path, and you're not supposed to be down on the road. And actually, it's at the Baptist Church on Norman Road, and you've got to respect.
Well, we got a good talking to about it. We well
That's
and
right.
truly
Yeah,
told
well,
by the returning officer,
well,
you don't hang around the car park, don't go
no,
up approaching people.
well, he has been, and there's a young woman with black hair who's up there, and she has browbeaten people in the middle of the road. Anyway, he was removed, and
We
yeah.
had one of those at the local election.
Oh, and you know, it's silliness, but it's probably a symptom of the person that they are, and that's the sadness.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in this game. Someone said to me, "How long have you been involved in politics?" Well, as you know, Chichi, I had 8 years as the member for Keppel, but I have a lot of friends in all and the Clancy Mulbrick's father ran against me a number of times, Paul. He's a really decent man, a man of integrity. I might not agree with his politics, but that's no reason to attack the person.
The thing is, Paul, in life we all have choices.
That's the big point. Those choices. Yeah. And there must be times when all of us have made choices which we probably look back and say, maybe that wasn't quite the best choice. but if you do that, you make those choices, you live with the results,
you have to live
and you
with
move
it.
on.
That's right. And maybe there's a lesson to learn. Hopefully. You know, but I do, and I always think there's a reason for everything. Something happens, there's a reason.
Well, I'm not sure what the reason is here. Sorry to interrupt,
you're right,
Paul, but I'm actually concerned about this election because the type of politics that are being played is really, some of it's quite revolting and scary, and it's unnecessary, disgusting tactics. And I mean, we can sit here, independent, Labor, Libs,
Jewish.
Take a guess. He's probably a little bit of Labor, but I mean,
Michael's on the fence with all of us, and very helpful.
Yeah, but I mean,
still, we can all sit here and have a conversation, but if you pop a One Nation into the mix, then we're getting this vitriol. It's a type of. I'm all about trying to bring the community together.
Can I make an outlandish statement?
Sure.
You people, I know, we have different points of view. We get on well. We tolerate other people's points of view. If you were going to introduce certain people or certain political people, I'm sorry, I wouldn't even be here.
No. Look, I think everybody is entitled to their opinion.
That's right.
But they don't have to force it down your throat.
No.
And that's why you and I have always got on so well together,
That's
Paul.
Right.
I mean, there's never ever, and I was telling them this afternoon that when your wife used to bring you sandwiches or cake or something, I always got a sandwich as well. Right. And Morris would give you a pie.
That's right.
And I'd have a pie.
No.
And it was great.
And that's my point about the Greens candidate. You know, he's a person of integrity. He's been brought up that way, and you respect that. But if people don't act according to the integrity that the community expects, and I have a very, very real dislike of people who don't have integrity in public life.
Yeah.
That's a personal comment, but
same here.
Yeah, I don't retract it at all. I don't recoil from it at all. If you've got no integrity, get out. And if you can't stand the heat, which is the reason for some of the rubbish, if you can't stand the heat, you get right out of the kitchen.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing about democracy and during an election is actually it is a celebration of democracy. It's a celebration of every individual having a say for what our future direction will be. And we always, I would suggest, if we're going to build a strong community, want a a community-minded direction where
And
we
that you
that
work
Absolutely.
together.
decision
Yeah.
that we all can live
Pull
Michael,
with.
I
together.
agree with that, except for one small qualification. Australia, and I think Austria, but there is one other nation, I can't think of it offhand. Australia is the only country in the world that expresses their democracy by compulsory voting. And I've had people saying, oh, I don't like preferential voting. Well, ultimately, preferential voting boils down to the least worst option, I guess is that's probably a throwaway line, but it is. It's to the least worst option. If you take a look at the American system, first past the post, there's about 48% of Americans vote, which means 50% of them vote for
Whoever.
I won't go there. Yeah,
300 million people, and we've got two
50%
choices.
of them vote for one, 50% vote for the other. But that's only 22% of the American population. And then they complain because the president did this or the president did that or didn't do this or didn't do that. The only way that you can have people standing there saying, well, they didn't do that, you say, okay, that wasn't what you voted for. But if you haven't voted for it, you get the quality of the government and the quality of the people that you deserve.
Did vote.
No, that you deserve. And
Yeah.
sometimes the people you get, very few people want. But if they have big numbers and drag them out to vote, and the Americans put them in buses and bus them there, to make sure that you vote for a certain thing. And I don't believe that's democracy. But I suppose they say it's democracy because you are voting for one or the other, but I can't see that it is.
But
And
people need
isn't
to
the
get
world in a
engaged more.
mess?
Yeah, people need to get engaged more with politics and learn more about each candidate instead of just jumping on a bandwagon of ideology as well, and also in grasping onto the negative things. Like there's a lot of politics at the moment where they're just taking all these super polarizing ideas and then riling everyone up with them.
Yeah, schools don't teach politics. They have this subject called political something or other, and people say to me, "Oh, I can't be interested in politics. I'm not interested in politics. Why are you interested in politics? Politics governs every facet of your life, regardless of what else happens.
Yeah, local.
And if you kid yourself that you're not interested in politics, don't go on a committee. Don't get involved with a sporting club. Don't go to a PNC or a PNF. Don't be a member of a Lions club or a Rotary club. Because it is all politics, and sometimes dirtier politics than what happens.
They call it dynamics.
Oh, is that right? People dynamics.
People dynamics.
Oh, wow.
And it's politics.
Of course
Petty
it
politics,
is.
yeah. But it's just engaging with personalities and managing personalities. But I think if we can get into a concept where we're bringing people together and accepting people's differences more than polarizing people, then we'll be able to work together, because we have to work with different levels of government that are also potentially on opposite sides.
That's right.
And we're going to find ourselves at the moment potentially where we've got a player in the system who can't work with any government because they're polarising the community.
Yep.
So we'll be left worse off.
Well, I get totally frustrated when you have a member of parliament in your community and you go to them with a situation that you believe is wrong. And I can quote two situations here with Vince Lester, and I'm not afraid I was, and one was the Bush children.
That's right.
And the other was
Sir Leslie Wilson
drugs,
home, which used to be along
drugs
Todd
being
Avenue.
sold outside of St Brendan's.
The what?
Drugs.
Oh,
right?
St Brendan's isn't the only one these days.
No. But I knew about it because I had boys at Brendan's, and they came home. And I went to Vince Lester about it and said, oh, well, I'll have to put this in the paper that you are upset. And I said, you what? I have come to you as my member to speak to the police and to do it discreetly. So I said, as far as that's concerned, Vince, forget it. I'm not going to give you any names. I'm not going to give you anything. Well, I actually had myself handcuffed to the gates of the Bush Children, remember?
I don't remember that particularly, but I know the circumstances about the
Right.
But we are
wasn't
not
it?
surprised in
No,
any way.
I arranged for it. My husband said to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "You don't want to know, but you can come and bail me out." Right? I was there fighting that they didn't close. They just spent $280,000 on a new building, and then they're closing it. And
Because it was big real estate, and they were offered big money, and it was the saddest thing that ever happened. Look, as a when you talk about handcuffed to things, you take a look. Is Sigrid Thornton is an Australian actress. Her mother and a friend chained themselves to the bar at the Regatta Hotel in Brisbane in about 1964 or 5 because women weren't allowed in public bars. They chained themselves. They chained themselves to the brass rail.
well, there's a beautiful, beautiful artist here in Yeppoon, and I'm sure you know Jackie Campbell, and she was matron of the Bush Children.
No, I don't. I know the name, but I don't.
Her daughter Robin runs the local radio. She's one of the announcers there.
I met Robin, but
Yeah.
I don't know the family.
Oh,
Chichi,
Jackie.
I've only been here, living down here for 25 years, but I've been in Rocky 40. But this used to be my stamping ground because my dad was a shearer and there was never a great deal of money. But we used to get every school holidays, if dad didn't have to shear right up towards Christmas, we would get, I think they call it the far west. No, the far west school assistants, and we used to get free or reduced fares on the railway to come to Rockhampton, which was our nearest city.
Yeah,
and then we'd come down here. We'd catch the train at Archer Park. I can recall back to about 7-year-old, but beyond, I've got a bit of a problem beyond that. Maybe
our kids were on the Jericho Express.
What, the second division? Yeah, but I mean, we came down here, and Mum and Dad would rent a flat. We didn't. We weren't with the Bush Children's, but it was the kids, and there were a darn side more kids probably then who had a lot less financial backing and capital than what happens today, but there are still a lot who don't. But they came down here. They might, I think it was a week or that they would come down
10
here
days.
and sadly, about 1960 or 61. The Midlander went into Medway Creek on its way back from Longreach, and there were 7 people killed. There was a whole group of kids, if I recall correctly, going to the Leslie Wilson home on that train.
Well, the interesting thing was that Jackie was the matron, and she had a collection of Dr. Seuss books, and she would act them out. The Cat in the Hat and all of those ones, and Sam I Am and whatever. But Mrs. Kirshen, who was running the Bush Children, said that everything that was there belonged to the Bush Children and nothing would be returned. Giggle and Gossip had given a lot. The motorcyclists used to come through every year with their Christmas run.
Yep.
For all the kids. We bought a trampoline for the children. At that stage, they were talking about using the old post office as a place for kids to go after school.
That's right.
So I went and asked, could I have the cassette player that I had given and the whatever from Giggle and Gossip for the street kids? And she said, nothing leaves here. So one morning at 4 a.m.
Here we go.
Whoops. Do we, there is actually a time limit on certain offences.
Oh, well, that's what I'm doing. At any rate, there I am with a screwdriver, and the windows used to have those funny latches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm down
They're
there
easy to get
thinking,
into.
and once again, Chi, where are you off to? It's all right, Morris. I'm doing something for the community. I'm sure you are. Anyway, down I go, and I'm trying to get this bloody screwdriver in, and all of a sudden there's a tap on my shoulder saying, "What are you up to?" I jumped, and it was Jack Vivers, who was the gardener. I said, "Oh, Jack," I said, "I want to get in." And he said, "That's obvious." He said,
Oh, God.
"What do you want to get in for?" And I said, "Jackie Campbell's having a nervous breakdown," because I said all her Dr. Seuss books are being claimed, and they're her personal things. They're not gifts that were given. And Mrs. Cushion won't give it. And he said, "Well, for God's sake, girl, I've got a key. Come on." So he let me in, and I had a, styrofoam book. And we put all of them in. And I said, "Oh, Jack, you're a wonderful person." And he said, "You give Jackie my love." He said, "I used to love the way she was with the kids, because with her art, she'd get butcher's paper, and the kids would say they wanted Donald Duck, and she'd draw Donald Duck, and they could colour it in."
That's right.
And then, so they didn't need colouring books because Jackie could do it all. You know, she was amazing.
Now our granddaughter asks us to print it off on a computer instead of drawing it.
Yeah.
Right.
But at any rate, I went around. They used to live in Meland Street, and I beeped, and Rob came to the car, and he said, "What's up, Chi?" I said, "Got Jackie's books." And he said, "What books?" I said, "The ones she used to do, the Dr. Seuss's." He said, "You're kidding." He said, "I haven't heard the end of this." So at any rate, he yelled out, and Jackie, and the tears rolled down her face.
Wow.
But Jack Vivers was English. It's the most amazing story. And you'd have to know, he came out from England as a 16-year-old, I think a 10-pound pom,
Yeah, that'd be right.
and worked on a cattle station. And the cattle station he worked on used to have, and it was massive, used to have an accountant who came and did the books and everything for the grazier. And he one day asked the grazier, "Can you please, would you look after my money for me and invest it?" He said, "Because I get fed, I get clothed,
That's right.
I don't need and take my wages." So he did.
£10 a week and keep.
Yeah. So he did, right? So that accountant bought properties here in Yeppoon, houses, which were being rented. So when that man died, he was a multi-millionaire. No money, no family, just himself. He bought the surf life-saving buggies, and he built a home in Rockhampton for autistic and disabled children.
Is that the one up near the gardens?
Yes.
Wow.
And that was all out of his estate. And I think the money's still being invested to keep it all going. But nobody knew. He was always in dungarees and sweeping and giving the kids, and he used to drive the bus up to the thing, and he loved children. But yeah.
Chi, it's interesting you should say that, because I had a good friend who was a Westpac bank manager in Rockhampton, and he came to Rockhampton and he said, "Do you know that this city is one of the first places I've ever been where there are more people worth $1 million than you have ever seen?" And I'm talking about 30 years ago. And he said they look like hobos.
Yeah.
I said,
Well, that's the only way to do it.
Charlie
Yeah.
Clark?
No one knows.
Who?
They're not asking
Charlie
you for money
I
all
knew
the
I
time. You get to
acted for
keep
Charles Fergus Clark.
Well, Charlie Clark
Well,
stole my horse.
Well, I can't help that. He never ever came to me because you reported it. Yeah, Charlie Clark, he bought, as a matter of fact, that Huxham, if you drive to Westwood, Huxham, the old sanatorium,
Yeah.
he bought that as a rural property.
Oh, he was a rogue.
He was a rogue, but I tell you what, he was a very, very wealthy rogue.
And you know what? When he came to the house, when we lived down on the beachfront, he would only drink out of fine china. Don't give me a mug. I'll have your Royal Dalton, thanks, Chi-Chi.
Wow.
So we had but then he had a mistress who had a master.
One.
And didn't that fellow put a hammer through his fridge?
Yes.
Yes.
Really getting the tea now.
Yeah.
He's long gone.
Yeah, he is long gone. But, Petrina,
It was a character.
people don't, and I suppose we engender this in ourselves. Like, Chi-Chi's lived a few years on Earth, so have I. And nobody realises, I said to someone yesterday, and you sit and listen to things that Chi-Chi tells you, and I think, I knew that. Oh, God, yeah. I didn't really know that. But yeah, no, I'm serious. You have seen life through the dirty bottom of a glass. If there's a depth to which you can sink, I can say, I think without any reservation, I've seen it. I had 20 years in the court system, both as a magistrate and as an administrator. During that time, I served national service. I did 24 and a half years in the Army Reserve. I retired when I turned 55 as a captain. And when we're talking about, dealing with people earlier, you try exercising control over 60 human beings who have their own point of view, who are opinionated and very highly trained soldiers. It's a matter of you have to do it. But you have to meld that into what you become in life, I think, and that's what's wrong. A lot of people don't.
But you require a lot of skills to be able to do that, and you learn that along the way too. And I think people either pick up really good skills to do that, or they pick up quite negative skills to be able to wrangle.
I don't know that I could ever come to horse rustling as a skill.
I could ride the horse, but I couldn't. Don't know about the rustling bit. Well, I'll tell you a story about rustling, but it's not about
Charlie.
horses. No. Actually, my father, I used to serve jury notices when I first started work, because now they send them out by post. But I used to serve jury notices in Longreach. And my father, used to hate me coming home and saying, Dad, I've got a jury notice for you, because he couldn't go out. He'd have a contract to shear. He'd have to come into town because you had to be there. Anyway, he was on a jury, and this bloke was charged. I can't remember how many sheep there was. I know this. He'd stolen a charge with stealing a truckload of sheep. Anyway, this is, bear in mind, I don't need to tell you, it's 60-odd years ago. And you're not supposed to talk about juries, but anyway, we were sitting at the table. They acquitted this bloke, and I was listening to the evidence, and I thought, God, this bloke's gone. I knew him. And anyway, we're sitting at the table. I said to Dad, I know this is, you're not supposed to talk about it, but why did you acquit him? He said, it was quite simple. I said, yes, but the evidence was so strong. He said, it was quite simple. I said, what was quite simple? He said, the person who actually stole the sheep was on the jury.
Wasn't Jack Bennett?
Hey? Shh, I'm not. My lips are zipped.
I had the most hysterical situation down here in the lagoon. There was a fellow there who said, "Wow, this is something else, isn't it? Yeppoon people are so lucky." So straight away I knew he was a visitor. And I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Barcaldine." I said, "Oh, Barky." I said, used to be a lady here in Yeppoon who had a couple of bakeries and went bankrupt. And I said, her son's got a bakery. He said, I know who you're talking about. She's in Barcaldine now. And I said, well, we were quite close friends. And I said, what did you do? And he said, worked for the main roads. And I said, just in Barkey? He said, oh, God, no. He said, Aramac, Alpha, Jericho.
Well,
I said,
Barcaldine was Barcaldine was the central region depot, and they had a sub depot in Winton.
Yeah. And I said to him, oh, I said, then you'd have to know Rosedale and Lennox and
Would have to know
Jack
where.
Bennett, Rosedale, the property, right?
Yeah, outside Longreach.
Yeah.
My uncle managed it.
Right. So I said, and Lennox and there. And he said, yes, as a matter of fact. He said, I said, it was the Wild West, let me tell you. And he said, yeah, he said, I heard this story. He said, fellow out there by the name of Jack Bennett went to visit this grazier, was full of turps, and on the way came through and went through this fellow's white gates, timber flying everywhere. And he said the owner of the property took off after him, but he said there were roost shooters in the car and they got rid of the bullets out of the car. The gentleman threw his vehicle in front of Bennett's and it had an M1 carbine automatic, and the roost shooters were yelling out, don't shoot, don't shoot.
Semi-automatic. It's an American military weapon.
That's right. Anyhow, he said he got out and he went brrr with the gun, and Bennett was doing a tap dance, and Morris said, you have 24 hours to fix my gate or else you will get the bullet. And I said to him, where'd you hear that story? And he said, from the roost shooter. He's my son-in-law. I said, well, it was my husband who had the M1 carbine. How small a world is that?
But it's an even smaller world. You know, when you talk about Barcaldine, my eldest son's born in Barcaldine, but my mother's family, my grandparents were on Forest Hill outside Barcaldine for about 30 years. And my grandmother's family actually went west with the railway, and they established the Ilfracombe store. He was a teamster. His name was Boff, B-O-P-F. And anyway, I saw a photo the other day of the Masonic Temple in Barcaldine, it's actually been rebuilt, but the original one, the timber had been treated and had been worked on so that it looked like brick. My great-grandfather moved the original one from Alice Siding into Barcaldine when they first moved it, yeah. And up to about 10 years ago, might be a bit more than that, 12 years ago, the store in Ilfracombe had above the top established 1892. My great-grandparents actually established the store. My grandmother was born in Ilfracombe, and she lived all her life there. She was one of the first pupils at the Ilfracombe State School.
Did you and Morris ever get together and talk?
No, I knew Morris, but we never got together and talked about it because I didn't know he come from there for a start. No. But when you mentioned Rosedale, there's a whole series. There's Rosedale, Rose Hearty, Rosemount. Well, my uncle Lou Taylor managed Rosedale, and two of his daughters own properties around Longreach now. They're my cousins, but then one of them, his son John, has a property at. It used to be, it's near a siding which used to be called Paradise, which sits out in the middle of nowhere. And believe me, between Barcaldine and Longreach in midsummer, it is not paradise. So they changed the name to Ryan. But yeah, John's on. I can't remember the property.
So did you know Bluey Singleton?
Hey?
Did he ever come before you?
I never sat on the bench out there. I was clerk of the court, Mitchell. I was senior clerk in Mount Isa, senior clerk in Townsville. I was on the relieving clerk of the court in Townsville. I was magistrate in Cooktown.
You've moved around.
Oh, yeah, you've been cruising everywhere.
I had 18 years.
Goodness.
I can remember going down to Sydney to my mother for Christmas, and we were watching Glenn Ford and somebody else, Cattleman versus Sheepman.
It's called Sheepman, actually.
Oh, at any rate, it's bang, bang, bang. My mother said, "Oh, aren't we lucky that we don't live in those times now?" And I thought, come to Jericho. Wasn't game enough
Your
to
husband's
tell
just been making
Actually-
someone dance for a date.
Actually, that movie Sheep Man, it's interesting when you, Chi-Chi, I'm a bit worried because I'm starting to get a bit old. I remember there was a little Mexican bloke, I can't remember the actor, but he owned the sheep and Glenn Ford owned it, or he was a shepherd, and Glenn Ford owned the sheep and they were fighting for the range. Anyway, that Glenn Ford had knocked a bloke down and he'd had a knife in his hand and he had a knife in one hand, gun in the other, and he dropped them and he was going, and this little Mexican threw a knife and it went between this bloke's fingers and he said, oh God, I was only a kid. Yeah, sheep man, Glenn Ford.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know about this. What you?
I'm going to wrap this up.
You're right. You want to talk about
this topic or this whole thing?
The
politics?
topic.
You want to talk about politics?
It would be awesome. I want to keep listening because I love it.
Yeah.
But I do actually want to get your thoughts on this. So you might know about that organisation that I've only just found out recently. It seems to be some sort of lobby organisation that the councils have put together. It must have been when they amalgamated. So it's the CQ Rock.
CQ Rock.
Yeah. So
yeah. Regional something councils.
Yeah, and so that incorporates us and Rocky and Gladstone and out west.
Central Highlands. I don't know that it takes in, Longreach and Barcaldine are in that. They're the regional councils.
Yeah. So they've got some stuff on there that I find interesting, especially for Livingstone, because they're touting that we're going to be increasing by 23,000 people over the next 7 years. So their website hasn't been updated for a couple of years, but it said by 2031 we'll be at 63,000 people. So that type of growth seems unrealistic based on how we could build for people.
I have some doubts about that figure. I agree that there will be a massive increase, but unless Livingstone Shire has a lot different approval, that is not going to happen. Approval system, and it's to do with planning and everything, certainly. But I just don't think I don't think it will happen. Maybe by 2040, but I mean, I don't think it will happen within that time frame.
But 2040 is not, that's not a long time away either. So that would be 15 to 16 years. Yeah. Well, but for us too, we would need to have a lot more medium density housing, and development would be a bit different around here if that was the case.
One of the things in Livingstone, Chi-Chi will remember some of these. One of the things in Livingstone, they closed down a whole heap of, I suppose you'd call them a boarding house, but they were multi-unit dwellings, they were flats and whatnot. And a case in point is the Keppel Bay Sailing Club, the Spinnack over on that used to be the Post and Telegraph flats.
That's right.
You know
Graham,
they got rid of something like 800 housing accommodation units over about a 3-year period, and they approved 68. And that's to me, that's just not future planning. There are people who've got, I suppose you say they get up and go, but there are also people who you'd say it got up and went. And they just wanted to, I don't know about turn their back, but I just think that,
That was John Bowen.
Hey?
Bowen.
Well, in part, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's sad because there were he did good things.
Yes.
But it was those things which they only saw at the end of their nose. I mentioned earlier that I signed the document to close the railway, and everyone fought me. Bloke, I won't bore you with tedium, but it started even at Kawarrell. We can't have a rail trail, or we can't have that because people might steal stuff out of our yard. it was
The mentality.
It's the mentality, and to be fair to the council, they have to change the mentality of people who live here, because there's a lot of people here who don't have the same point of view. They don't want to see any increase. You know?
They like the Sleepy Hollow.
But I think that's part of the problem, because the
Well,
increase will happen
I believe
regardless of whether they want it.
I believe that's the whole problem.
Mm.
It will happen,
Mm.
but the whole community isn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
Look, as an example, if you go over Turangaba State School, there's a new estate over there. Now, that estate has only been completed for about 4 months.
That's right. Right next door to Malcolm
Gates.
Gates.
Mal Gates, you go down Melrose Place into Mal Gates' front
That's
door,
right.
and you turn left. Do you know that those blocks have only been finished for about 4 months, and there are 16 houses already constructed?
Yeah.
You know, people don't get out and have a look, and they say, "Oh, we don't want to get too big too quick," and some of the people on council don't have the
foresight.
They don't have the foresight. Thanks, Chichi. They don't have the foresight because they want to live in the present. Okay, we all live in the present, I suppose, because we've got to breathe, but you can't only live in the present.
Our leaders have to strategize for the future, because they're the only ones who have the information and the organisation to be able to put together a strategy.
I agree, Michael. The only problem with that, and Petrina is probably more au fait with all this than all of us, is the media. They don't want to see it unless it benefits them. They don't want to report it unless it benefits them and their benefactors, and that's wrong.
Any comment on that? Because that's an interesting...
Well, I think that's the beauty now of the internet, because we can be our own publisher, in which I am, and I get out as much information as I can, even to this point of running as a candidate. So I obviously don't think I'm going to win, but it's a great way of getting information out there, because people can look and go, oh, great, more awareness. Let's make people more aware of what we actually need here. And Chi-Chi brought something up last week with Beryl about, there's no offense to old people of this community, and I know you guys aren't like that, but they're like, no, we can't have growth, we can't do this, we can't do that. And it's like, well, growth's going to happen to us if you go blocking our discussion about it. It won't be the way we want it to be. So we want community, we want a really engaged community, and if you're shutting down that conversation all the time, we can't be engaged and build a community that we want to build.
Can I just make a comment about the current election? And this is what really concerns me. Regardless of politics, the major parties, and I know people talk about the major parties, with a couple of exceptions, have never ever governed other than for what they saw as the benefit to the community. The Liberal Party, the National Party, or Liberal National Party in Queensland, the Labor Party, the bigger parties have never ever governed other than for the benefit of the community. Splinter parties don't do anything. And we have a very real problem here that if we elect someone from one nation, and I say one nation but if we elect, the Greens are probably a little bit different because they've got a couple of people in Parliament. But if we elect one, and particularly here, he will never be here. There will be absolutely nothing that this community will achieve. Yeah. At least if it's Labor, if it's LNP, and I lost the seat to the LNP in 2012 for 3 years. Then Brittany won it back. Yep. But if whichever it is, at least they are maybe not as much as what people would like. They are talking about the future. Future actions, and if people can't see that, then I'm sorry, but they are going to have to bear the end result of their actions. And I shudder.
Won't be pretty.
And I
Well,
shudder.
We will just go so backwards. We will absolutely just, and not only that, our community will become completely dysfunctional because it's putting out there where at the moment that particular group is thriving on negativity and bringing all that divisiveness and vitriol, and keeping not bringing community together.
That's right.
And the problem with that is that they'll get consumed with that, and that's what their focus will be on, instead of the focus being how do we grow our community in a cohesive way and have the things that we need and we want and be fighting for that, like infrastructure, like the roads and the hospitals, and better housing developments and nurturing community engagement.
Hey, hold on. We're a tourist resort.
Yeah.
We've lost 400 beds with Iwasakis.
That's right.
Right? We're going to have a 750 occupancy conference centre. Where are they going to stay? Now,
where are they going to put the conference centre?
It's there.
Where?
The sailing club.
The sailing club.
I debate whether or not they fit 750
upstairs.
in. But
Well, actually, I will pop up a photo about that because I found the original photo they put up and they've taken a fair bit of it off. And it's like, oh, they bought our sailing club from Tamu.
I've watched them build it, and I very much doubt that it'll be 750. But
does it matter?
Well, it does if in terms of what you're saying about where will they stay, because if you only need accommodation for 450 because that's all it can fit in, that's all they will aim towards.
Well, there is not accommodation for 450, I can tell you.
There's not infrastructure for 450.
Bridge,
that's right.
I play bridge.
Yeah.
And we've got the barrier reef coming up next year. When we did this, the very first time, 600 people, South Africa, New Zealand, everyone. We had to bill it, and Ursula's gave us the boarding school.
Yep.
There was no accommodation. This year, we were asked, please defer till next year from the Beef Week.
Yeah.
Because we need the accommodation.
Well, Beef Week was a case in point. There were people down here. There were people who were billeted. There were people who stayed in Gladstone because there was no accommodation.
Exactly.
You know, look, I've just been involved with the building of a grandstand at Brown Park, and the argument was, well, why would you build that? You know, because what would happen if you have big games or anything there? Do you know, and this is something that people don't pay attention to, there are 13 motels within walking distance of Brown Park. And those motels are already booked out for the next Beef Week 2 years down the track.
Well, they're talking. My niece ran Beef Week.
Yeah.
Cindy McNaught. She was, because she's a veterinary scientist, and she checked all the cattle before they came and where they went. They've told her unless they bring the showground up to a decent standard, Beef Week will go to Brisbane. She's been told.
I don't know that it'll go to Brisbane, but there are a few other places that would vie for it.
Well, Brisbane's what she's been told.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because they've got the accommodation.
Well, not only accommodation though, they've also got the Royal National, the exhibition ground.
Yeah.
Wow. So our region doesn't own Beef Week in that sense.
Well, we did.
We do.
And we do.
But.
And
look, you've only got to look, as an example about that, you've only got to look at the Australian Grand Prix. Adelaide had it made, but the big problem was Adelaide didn't have accommodation. Suddenly, they've signed a contract to go to Melbourne, and they've been in Melbourne, what now?
A couple of years.
12 years?
12 years,
wow.
yeah.
Yep.
The material point here is, though, that we're putting the cart before the horse.
Yep.
So we're getting these major things happening, but we don't have all the infrastructure in place to be able to support it, whereas we need to get a bit of a groundswell happening and build it up from the grassroots again.
You know, the thing that really concerns me, it's to do with the council, but I'm not blaming the council in this comment, if anyone wants to quote me. They are doing a job on the corner of Matthew Flinders Drive and Scenic Highway. Now, it was to do with water. As I understand it, and I haven't spoken to any of the councillors about this, but they found infrastructure under there that they didn't even know was there.
Yeah, that's right. They had to keep the road closed over the
They-
weekend.
That's
Yeah.
right, and it's
Yeah.
still closed,
Yeah.
and they're coming back. It's all operational, but they don't even know why it was there.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's forward planning.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And backward at the same time.
Yes, but I mean, look, anyone who subdivides land has to meet certain criteria.
Ask Brian.
They have to fit in with. They have to pay council headworks to allow them to increase the water, to increase the sewerage. All that. And I think at the present time, if you wanted to subdivide this into 2 blocks, the council have $33,000 a block as their application fee.
You can't be
Yeah.
serious.
That,
I'm dead
dead
serious.
serious.
Oh, give me a
That's
break.
why that place across the road's all wrapped in.
Oh, please.
What's the name?
$33,000.
Plastic.
So in a cost of
That's an
living
application.
crisis
That's the
where
application
people
fee.
And that's not the
homeless and everything,
agreement or anything.
and then they're telling people, oh, you can put a granny flat in your backyard. You could literally just separate your block if it was.
Well, you can't
In
separate.
Sydney,
Well,
they're
no one's
letting
going to
you-
pay that kind of money to do it. It's
No.
ridiculous.
I know.
Sydney's allowing, if you've got a big block, to have a house behind you and things
Well,
like
Sydney,
that.
I think, has and Brisbane has now reached it. They will allow subdivision of a block down to about 370 square metres.
Yeah.
That's tight. Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of all the infrastructure's there.
That's right. It's already there. Well,
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it there? And that's my point about the local council.
Oh, we've
Is
got
it
extra
there? We don't
infrastructure.
know what's there.
Well, we could find it more. We could go put some houses there now that we know that extra infrastructure.
Hey, I only live just up the road from there. I don't need any more
Subdivide
houses.
your block, Paul. We'll
Hey.
pop a granny flat out the back of your place.
I don't know where you're going to put it.
to
It'll be the smallest granny flat you've ever seen.
have it on stilts.
He
Put
doesn't
it
want you
above your
living there,
house.
no.
I don't care where you live. It's just, I'm not sure. We've got a little tin. We've got a little tin garden shed out the side. We could probably
You
put a.
could rent that out for $300 a week.
But I can see that down the future they're going to be knocking places like this down
Oh, of course.
to be putting.
Well, the big and a lot of people have said to me, and as they probably have to you, Chi-Chi, why don't you move into a retirement village? Why don't you live into a home? Because the ethos is if you have a 3-bedroom home and there's just you or just myself and my wife, a family can live in that. You can go and live in that.
How dare you live in your own house?
Yeah.
Terrible.
One that I've paid for.
Yeah.
What Chi-Chi and Morris paid for.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
You
you
know.
raise your children in and
Well, we didn't. We bought down here. Our kids had left home, but I mean, it's still a family home. But that's the ethos, even of some governments. Oh, we'll try and get people to downgrade or downsize so that we can use those big houses to put families into.
Well, let's even discuss that because at the moment, where are if we're talking about our area, so we don't have any type of apartment living. We've got we've got that Queen Street one.
Oh,
and then
we do
we've
have
got
a couple.
the
We've
new
got
one
we've got beaches. We've got over
Echelon.
at Roslyn Bay. We've got Echelon. They're all
But not
privately
many.
owned, but a lot of
Yeah.
them are owned by people and they're rented out.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
Touristy.
right.
Yeah.
And I spoke to a young girl or mother at the RSL. She had cerebral palsy and they live in Rocky. They come down here to have a break. Only one room or one unit between here and your Emu Park that they can take a wheelchair in. One unit.
And then the builders started to complain when the building codes were changed that you had to have doors in any house that was built that you could fit a wheelchair through.
Well, that still isn't being applied, apparently.
In some cases it is, but in a lot of cases it's not.
No.
But I mean that was the building code that was brought in.
Well, we've asked and we've written to Michelle Landry about it, that in future, any building that the public go to, that Access and Equity see the plans before it goes on
Before
the
it's
ground,
approved.
Before it's approved.
Because what we have is a situation where you have those standards and standards for disability and accessibility, for example, ramps or toilets, etc., toilet doors, whatever. But we find that those standards don't apply equally or fairly to everyone in our community.
Universally.
Universally is the
Yep.
correct thing.
Yeah.
And what we need, for example, is toilet doors on disabled toilets that slide open instead of open,
Now,
and
look,
that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, Chi-Chi made you stop and think about what's happened in the system. Chi-Chi made a point about Vince Lester. Now, people, a lot of people didn't like Vince, and I know that it was political. But do you know that Vince Lester introduced something, and you go to any hotel, any public utility, Vince Lester actually worked really hard.
Walk backwards.
No, he walked backwards. Yeah, it's very, very difficult to do. Actually,
Yeah.
he
Hell
walked,
on the muscles.
he walked 22 kilometres backwards, but he actually got the whole code changed so that toilet doors and that open outwards, and they have there's a special hinge that was devised that if you open it a certain way, it will lift up and you can lift the door off.
Of course, yeah.
And
because
that came
was
from
in case
Vince
of-
Lester, regardless of politics, regardless of
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
He
So
was,
if people had an incident behind the toilet door, the door could be lifted up and taken off, and they could be
That's right.
found.
Yes.
Now, now that being the case, there's a lot of disabled doors that are the only door in that can't be done. So if we take the station one, for example, that glass door, which is problematic, you couldn't do that to that door.
which one down at the Espresso?
The
No,
station.
the new station.
Yeah,
In that building where the espresso is, but it's up on the platform.
Yeah,
So
but
there's
you've,
all the
At the
toilets
back.
along
but you've
the
got
side
a ramp.
That
You-
ramp does not take wheelie walkers, and it does not take
Yes,
wheels.
it does.
Only at the back.
No,
The
the front
back ramp?
the front one does.
It depends on the
when
size of
when
it.
the
It
station
depends.
is open, you can go up the side and it will lead you straight onto the
But
upstairs.
it's the turn that won't take the big wheelchairs.
At the front, if you've got a larger one, the wheelbase doesn't
Oh,
make
if
it
you,
around.
I would hazard a guess that it wouldn't take an electric wheelchair.
No,
Mm.
It
doesn't.
may take a manual one where someone's pushing it. It would be very difficult for somebody who is trying to control their own
But
wheelchair.
that's what we're
Yeah.
saying. And
Yeah,
this is a
but
new
it'd take
building.
a wheelie walker.
It's a new
It does.
building.
Oh,
But even the wheelie walkers are getting this size now.
I know because although they did have a seat in them originally, they have got the stage now where you're virtually bringing your seating with you.
Yes.
You know, oh yeah. My wife these days is on a walking stick because she's got a problem with her hip, and that's when you find that you have a problem, that you
Mhm.
realise that the problems that you have complained about are a bloody side worse than what you complained about.
We had a
Right.
gentleman who came to Access who had a stoma.
Yeah.
Now, we're not mind readers and we do the best we possibly can. This man could not use one toilet in the whole of Yeppoon or Emu Park because there's not a hook for his stoma.
And now that's all been rectified.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
I
good.
actually thinking about that.
So he
You
needs
know-
a hook for the stoma and a or people
No,
with that
to
and a
put-
mirror for them to work out when they're trying to reattach it.
Attach it.
Yeah.
But we would not know that until that
and
person comes
and
forward.
believe it or not, Chi-Chi, that's probably the problem for a lot of people because they don't want to talk about it. It for some reason it's a
Private, personal thing.
you know, it's very private. But that privacy to which you're entitled, you can only get when you are able to exercise that privacy yourself.
Yeah.
And if it's not known about, then how can you make the provision for it? But they're the sort of things that have to go to those planning groups who say, as you said, you know, you want to see a map or you want to see a plan.
Yeah.
I can tell you that, you know, half of them wouldn't even bring the plan out, or the plan you saw would be amended as they started to build it. You know, that's the realities.
Well, that's the problem.
When you have to get human rights involved.
So we've found that with this group now, it's starting to, you know, it's getting more and more active. Like the pool, the new pool that's happening over, well, not new pool, but you know, they're fixing the pool at Cooey Bay. You would know that quite well, living right next door. They bought all the plans to the group, and then we got to have a sticky beak at it, and then everyone goes, oh, look, you're going to have to change this and do this, and we need an extra disabled car park, and then they sort of explained to us, well, why that can't happen, and then of course we're just like, well, too bad, fix it, and that kind of, and putting in different type of toilet facilities and stuff, and so that was awesome. They got to bring that to the table before it actually started. So the difference with the new sailing club, which got $20 million of funding, don't have certain things that are necessary, and now it's too late, so they'll have to retroactively fix it, even though we were told to get stuffed. We'll now push that even more.
Yes, but
so that has to happen.
It has to happen purely and simply because that is the law of the land these days. You must make those, and if you're not prepared to make them, we'll make you.
And this is with federal money, so I think we want to see a greater legal impetus from the feds when they hand over those money for buildings, just to make sure it gets done. Because
Michael, I hear what you're saying, and I agree most wholeheartedly.
But you don't like our luck.
Yeah, well, it's like backing a winner.
Yeah.
As a racehorse.
Well, we went to Emu Park. Now, this is an interesting one. We did a similar thing as what was done yesterday with the group. We had people with disability. We had the mayor, the councillors, we had NDIS. We were all there, Katrina and whatever. Wheelie walkers, wheelchairs. Do you know there was not one toilet we could get a wheelchair into? And even the Pine Beach, we nearly had to take the wheels off your wheelchair to get it through the door.
The library, the swimming pool,
and the library's a new building.
The community centre.
They do have a wheelchair friendly, but they're not open of an evening.
No.
They're not open of a weekend when people are there. So then I said to Creedeman, who's the engineer there for council, look at that toilet block, big toilet block. I said we could knock the wall out there and that side, then the first toilet, let's extend that. And he said, Chi, you can't touch it. I said, why? He said, it's heritage listed. Now, I've never heard of a shit house being heritage listed.
I have.
But it is.
Yeah, but no, I have. But where is it?
It's in Bell Park.
The Bell Park one, the big white one.
The big white one.
Heritage listed?
It's heritage listed.
The only heritage...
230,000 to build a new one.
It's interesting. The only heritage listed one I've ever seen is a one in the north of New Zealand. The walls are built out of bottles. I can't remember the name of the place, but everyone goes there and takes photos of it. That's the only one I've ever seen.
How do they cost a dunny too at $230,000? Now I can't see how that is actually real when they could literally just put an extra one beside the heritage listed dunny and one specifically for disability, and it could just connect into the same.
Well,
system.
I'll give you an example, and it's not even on the sewerage system. You go out to the race course, and we installed. It's got a wheelchair accessible disabled toilet, purely and simply because, and I can tell you without any argument that it was put there for one lady who goes to the races in a wheelchair, but everyone has the benefit of it if they want to go.
Yeah. I made sartes till they came out of my ears, if you remember, and I put in a children's
I don't remember
playground.
satay coming out of your ears.
That's a trick she'll do later.
Whoops.
You,
Yeah.
And we put in a children's playground.
Yep.
And then because of insurance, it wasn't safe and they had to pull it all
That's
down.
right. And
It broke
that
my heart. It
and
really
that is
did.
becoming the biggest problem with what we're talking about for the future. Insurance companies are controlling it. This duty of care, and you've got to do a what do you call it, an estimation of your care to people. You've got to do a check before you can get your insurance done. It is a nightmare.
That's why I stopped with the Giggle and Gossip floats. $500 they wanted me to pay for insurance to have my girls on the...
Yeah, and if you go to the markets at Bell Park tomorrow, the council have the whole thing covered for public liability, right? But every one of those stores
has to have
has to have their own
market insurance.
public liability insurance, not just market
It's
insurance.
$110 a year because we looked at it, and because Jerry's the president of the community markets on Saturday morning,
and
they all need one.
You have to have it. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because the council's terrified that if they have to join somebody else as a defendant, that the council will end up being solely liable.
Okay.
Because that's what it's turned up with their check of.
And it's really not the council's fault; it's the insurance companies again.
Oh, the insurance companies control the whole world, Gigi. It's really terrifying.
Yeah.
And in saying that, I know you've been involved with them over the years. I worked for them for 12 months. I was based in Barkul. I was their district inspector for what was then SGIO, it's now Suncorp. So, just another one of those happenings in one's life.
Well, it's more politics, isn't it?
Doesn't Suncorp have a APIA and there's quite a few?
Suncorp owns a whole heap of them, but most of them, the underlying ownership is AIG, Australian Insurance Group. Okay. We used to have our house insured with Vero. Now, Vero is actually based in New Zealand, and they withdrew from Australia, but Vero is owned by Suncorp.
Yeah, it's
the NRMA.
And you know what?
The NRMA is owned by Suncorp.
Well, I know because my son's in the caravan industry, which is repairs.
Yeah.
Right? And Suncorp now have bought repair shops of caravan businesses all around. And he said, it's interesting, Mum, because he said, I work with all insurance companies and people think when they have their thing that if they take out an insurance on their van, there's a disclaimer that says, if you are not happy with the recommended repair shop, you can find your own and they will cover it. So he's covered from Cairns to Perth. Yeah. He said, I get them from everywhere, Mum. He said, I'm taking over the entire highway. There's just vans all parked. Yep. But he can't get staff.
Oh. That's our next problem in terms of even of that future that you're talking about, Petrina. When times are good, people don't want to train staff. Suddenly they need stuff in a hurry, and the building industry is a good case in point. Suddenly they need stuff in a hurry. We've got to up the game. We've got to build 100,000 houses. We don't have any tradespeople because we haven't trained anyone. No, we'll get in. We've got to train them, and they will not. Well, some of them do now. Some of the apprenticeship boards and that will accept RPL should be one of the main criteria for. If a man's 42-year-old and he's worked all his life in the building industry but is not a qualified carpenter, I'm willing to bet that he's better than anyone who thinks they're a carpenter.
Yep.
You know,
well, he should be supported through the RPL process.
But so many apprenticeship boards and that will not accept RPL for an apprenticeship. You've got to start from scratch.
See, that's ridiculous. Yes. And I've been looking into the apprenticeship side of things lately because I've put in part of my campaign is about we should be skilling people locally and we should be giving people's trades locally. We should have a skill centre down here because we've got such unprecedented growth coming to us that we're going to be able to support all these people learning and building and all the infrastructure that's happening. We're going to need every single one of them. But also there's a rule that I've been trying to figure out and I'm not exactly sure whether it's like hard and fast, but it's one apprentice to one tradesman. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute.
No, it's not quite.
It's written that blatantly, but
yeah,
I thought it can't be
no,
in
you
stone.
can have 2 apprentices as a tradesman if you. There's a limitation on the 1-to-1. There is a 1-to-2, but I'm not sure where it cuts in or how it cuts in.
So when I look it up on the government site, it's got that 1-to-1 ratio. But then if you're a bigger company, you can have up to so many. But then you need to get approval to have more than that.
That's right.
And I think, right, well, surely, you know, if it's a 4-year apprenticeship, you don't have to be hovering over their shoulder all the time. But you could have more than one at a different levels. Like maybe if you've got a first year, you might not have a second, third, and fourth year. But if you've got a first year and a fourth year, you're going to be all right.
But the fourth year also becomes a little bit of the overseer for the first year.
Yeah.
And
that should be part of their qualifications.
Well, I would have
that
thought
leadership management.
Well, that management control.
The biggest thing too with the training, and this is once again where my son's involved, they go to the mines after they've got their...
That's right.
And he said you can't compete with the wages.
No, you can't.
I was telling them earlier, Paul, he put an ad out, got 40 applications, not one Australian.
And it's even worse than that because a lot of the people we're training, and this is particularly in the electricity industry, do you know that I know 2 people who are trained linesmen with Ergon who are fly-in, fly-out electricians to Ireland. And the Irish Free State gets all of their electricians, their high transmission from outside Ireland. They do not train their own lines people.
Well, you know.
Look, and
be a good holiday.
Hey,
a good working holiday.
Yeah, but you got to spend 3 years learning to be a liner.
4.
But hey, the doctors as well.
Well, actually, that's what we started on, wasn't it? Having all the workers here. So as we get this increased population, we need all the services to. That's it. That's a wrap.
We just keep talking till the battery runs out or the memory.
But the batteries run out, hasn't it?
That's it. Just done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do a cartoon over top of it.